Good morning and welcome everybody. My name is Mike and I'm going to be your presenter for today in this webinar. And in today's topic, it is about best practices in developing RPA. And in this webinar, I'll be sharing some of the common best practices and also some of my personal experience. So without further ado, let's start. Before we get started, mm, before we get started, so I would like to share that this session is basically recorded. And if you have any question, you can basically post your question in the chat and I will respond to that later on. And yeah, at the end of the webinar, kindly provide your feedback to me about what do you feel about this webinar. Okay, so a little bit about myself. So my name is Mike Lim, and I'm actually representing Cybiant I work as a robotic process automation consultant. So I've many years of experience in business, supporting business process to run build the RPA in a effectively and a manner. And yeah, so this is about me. And if you'd like to know more about me, you can actually go to my LinkedIn or you can email me to ask me some question as well. So in today's agenda, it is basically about best practices. What is best practices? Why do we need best practices? And some of the common best practices and my personal experience, based on my personal experience, what are the best practices in developing RPA? All right. So what is best practices? Best practices is basically uh, a standard set of procedure or is a set of guideline or ethics or idea that represent the most efficient way to do something or a prudent course in action. And best practices usually is there to ensure optimal efficiency and result in creating something. And in this topic, it is about optimal efficiency and result in developing the RPA automation. Okay. And COE, or usually we call it a center of excellence. Center of excellence should be a group of people who come up with their own set of best practices. Okay, so the set of best practices that usually serve them best or uh, they use a lot, which is basically comply to their requirement. And of course, if you are as a developer, you can always post your idea, contribute your idea to the center of excellence as well, where they can, because for best practices is not a fixed set of rules and it's basically transformed over time where if there is new technology or there is new idea came out. Okay. And why do we need best practices? Okay. Best practices is, imagine that for every developer have their own way in in developing their automation. Some developer can be very neat and tidy. Some can be very messy. Okay. So imagine you have a team of 10 different developer and each of them is developing the automation in their very own way without a set of standard. Then you can see like how messy can it be if somebody else in the middle of developing, somebody else need to take over their task. Okay, so it can be very messy because they do not know what the previous developer has been doing, or you can be also, be in a situation whereby it is difficult for the other team, like for example, a testing or the maintenance team to understand what or how the workflow is actually working. So best practices is there to help the developer, to help to develop highly effective process to streamline work. And in this topic, it is basically to ensure all the automation are created in a consistent and organized manner. Okay. And the best practices is there to ensure every developer produce a good quality of the automation, the RPA, and also help them in the efficiency in developing RPA as well. And best practices is is there to promote optimum maintenance when the RPA is up for production. Okay, and if there is developer does not follow the best practices, it is very likely people within the organization, whether it's the same developer team or the people from other team like the testing and develop maintenance team, will have to invest more time in debugging and debugging and troubleshooting. And it is also difficult for the team to reuse the workflow if they would like to reuse the workflow because they do not know what how the workflow actually works. Okay, so this is why the best practice exists. So here I would like to share some of the best practices, which is some common one, and also also will be sharing some of my personal experience. The first one is about documentation. Documentation is in this part is very important. Once you have choose a process which is basically follow the rules, the process which is rules-based, repetitive, and stable, then there will be a potential process for you to automate it. And while you are understanding, to talk with the process owner, you should be able to come up with a document, and we call it process document design document here. So in this document, it should be it should consist of something like the process map, the detailed step-by-step walkthrough, and some of the screenshot. And these are the items whereby it will help the developer in obtain the information and to develop the workflow. Once you have this process design document, basically what you can do is that you have to wear your analyzer hat, and you will basically can go from a high level picture and to deep dive into each process in detail. And what you need to do is that deep dive in detail and to translate all the process into your automation workflow design. And this process design document, that should be your important recipe book to build your workflow. So this documentation is important, whereby in every single process that you are about to design, you're supposed to have one process design document. The second one is about modularity, implement modularity. Okay, for some of the workflow, it can be very complicated, which it contain many steps, many tasks included in the workflow. So by implement modularity, it actually allows you to break down the complex workflow into a bit size and a dedicated document components. And imagine that you are basically the idea of you are now playing building Lego. It's the same concept whereby when you are building Lego, it's basically you are building each module, and then finally then you combine everything together to become one final piece of outcome that you anything that is a robot or is a ship or anything. So basically, it's basically built in component and then combine everything together. And by implement modularity, it is basically improve the maintenance effort as well, whereby as and when any parts of it or run into error whereby it needs some update or changes, the developer only need to go into that particular module to make changes to it only instead of make the changes to the entire workflow. And you just need to go into that particular module to make changes and to make some update. Okay. And the third one is about project phasing. Don't be surprised that some of the business process come with very complex workflow that it might be a few hundred or could be few thousand of steps to get uh one process to complete one process. In this case, it is always recommended to consider splitting the workflow into different phases of it for implementation. All right. And the good thing about doing the project phasing is that you can avoid the long waiting time for the process owner, and the process owner can enjoy the automation benefit stage by stage. So here is some of the example that I can think of that report generating. Report generation can be extremely complicated. Like for example, a company would like to build an automation to generate a weekly production report, which require a combination of several report from different system. Okay, so if we were to break that this project into different phases, so that you can see that in first phase we can actually build the automation to generate the daily report. Once this is done, then we can publish this part that where it can this automation is basically generating the daily report for the process owner. And then when we come into second phase, which is to build the automation to generate the weekly report, and then we publish it. And then go into the third phase, which is to generate the weekly outstanding order report. And once it is done, and we publish it, so that you can see that stage by stage we are basically implementing deploying the workflow, and until the final part, which is to combine all three different reports and to generate the final report, which extracting information from three different reports to generate the final report, so that we can see that this entire project is break into four different phases and implement at different phase, so that you can see when you had the first phase deployed, the daily report generation is automated by the robot already. So it's a reduced part of their job, which they already enjoy the benefit of it. And then the second stage, that they enjoy even more benefit out of it. So, and the third one and the fourth one. So, and when these four things combine together, this is the final product that you would like to deliver to the process owner. Okay. So, in this sample scenario, the important message is that facing the project is less hectic for the developer to develop the workflow, because you're basically split it into different phases, and the process owner are basically happy because they get to see the improving result phase by phase, instead of waiting maybe several months to get the entire thing done and deliver to them. So this is the benefit of doing the uh, facing the project. All right. And the fourth one is about store the reusable component. While you have the process design document and while you're analyzing it, that developer should be able to identify uh, what are the steps that is basically repeating. And once you identify the repeating step, you can basically store the repeating step as a workflow and share it with other developer who is also working together in this project. And of course, when we store it, then we can always reuse it during the development. Some of the common steps that we can always reuse it as a reusable component. Like for example, logging into a subsystem, like for example, ERP system or SAP system, the step is always the same. So instead of like and in every workflow, we have to create from scratch again, create from scratch for the login step. What we can do is that we save it as a step, as a workflow, and we reuse it every time when we require to log in into your system like ERP or SAP. Another one can be like the step to save document. Whenever you are downloading something from your, let's say from your ERP or SAP system, the way to save the document, the document or the report is basically the same. So instead of rebuilding the step to save document, we can always reuse the component, reuse this part of workflow to save the document. All right. And same for the sending email, housekeeping is basically the workflow that can be reused by other developer as well. So this is only four example that I can think, which is a very common one and depend on of your business process. And there could be other thing that you should be able to identify as a repeating step that you can always store it and share with the team, the developing team. Okay. And the fifth one is about improve the readability of the workflow. So in this topic, it is basically it is about okay. Put it this way, ignoring the readability of the your RPA script is a common mistake by a lot of the RPA developer. In this topic, it is about how easy for somebody else to take your workflow. I mean, other than myself. Let's say I am the developer. How easy is it somebody else to take my workflow and to understand about what the software robot is programmed to do? Okay, so it's basically you take my robot to understand what is that about and what is the workflow is doing. Okay, without a good readability, developer often lost track of the process. Like for example, like when they create few hundred of steps, when they scroll back into the top one, they will often lost track like what the process actually is doing. They might lost track if they did not improve the readability of the workflow. With a good readability, is also help in reducing the time in troubleshooting, debugging, and maintaining the workflow. So what are the things that we can do to improve the readability of the workflow is basically by providing meaningful name to the workflow file for the activity, for the variable, and for the arguments as well. And it is also good that for some of the steps to use, I mean, to apply comments or annotation to describe what that section of step or activity is doing. And another way to improve the workflow readability is by removing the unused or disabled codes. Okay, which means while developing, we might be doing some testing in between, and we might be uh, disable some of the code for testing purposes. Okay, once it is, the testing is done, we should have the habit of remove any unused or the code that is already disabled. So basically, when you go through uh, the entire script, it is basically easier and cleaner for the developer to work with that bunch of script. Okay, and some of the thing that I can recommend about for the improve the readability is first one, give a meaningful name for the variable and argument. Okay, give a meaningful name and also have a standard naming convention for the variable and argument. Like for example, using title case, like you see in the variable name like first name, last name, and email address. The first character, like the you see the words in red is basically you apply the title case so that it is easier for the developer and somebody else, like the testing team, to read the variable. And if you are using argument, then you should also include the direction of the argument, whether it's in or it's out from the workflow. So you should include that into the argument as well. And then of course, then in the argument, you need to include direction and title case. Okay. And the third the third one is about giving the workflow a meaningful name. Like for example, log into a step, a number of steps to log into CRM, so that you're giving a meaningful name to it. Or another one which is to download report, something that is simple and it is meaningful that somebody when somebody have a look at it, they know what all this step is doing. And to further improve the readability, we can always add the comment or annotation to that particular set of activities, that what is it doing. So it's a comment, so it's basically include like one or two sentence of what is it doing, so that for other people when they take this workflow for maintenance or to troubleshooting or anything, when they look at it, they have the understanding of what this step is doing, instead of they need to go into the setting and everything to see what is that doing, which is basically is a waste of time. But one thing that you should also take note is that do not over comment as well. So this is to leave the workflow. If you do over comment, like you leave comment in every single step, you're basically leaving the workflow full of redundant comment, which making the entire workflow looks messy. So you should add comments or annotation, but remember, do not over comment or do not add over annotate it. Okay. And the seventh in this is about creating configurable files. So imagine if we are building a automation to download report from a system from your CRM system, and the directory of the file, the directory of the to save the report is basically hard code into the automation. Whenever we need to do any changes to the directory, the only way that we can do is to change the setting, is to update the script itself, and to redeploy the workflow. Okay, by doing this, by hard coding this kind of the setting in the automation, it drastically reduces the flexibility for both the developer and the process owner. Okay, because whenever there is any change requirement from the process owner, it will require to engage the RPA developer to make the changes and to redeploy the workflow into the production. Then only the changes can be done. So by creating this one configurable file, and usually it is in the Excel format, and it allowed the process owner to do all these minor changes by themselves without the need of the developer. Okay. And it is also to avoid the need to change and redeploy the workflow due to minor changes. And because if you were required to do that uh, from time to time, there is actually potential chance of uh, deploying some bugs into the workflow, which actually create more tasks for the developer team in debugging or the troubleshooting. Okay, some of the variable that we can be included in the configurable file, like for example, file directory, file name, for the email recipient, or some URL. All these things, if there are requirement, this for the requirement to change the file name or the directory from time to time, if we were to put this variable inside the configurable file instead of hard code it inside the workflow, so you can see that you can imagine that if you would like to change the email recipient, for example, one of the recipient no longer within the organization, and you want to you would like to remove them, or you would like to add more email recipient to receive the report. So the process owner can basically just go into the configurable file, go into the Excel file, and just the e- add the additional email recipient so that in the next process the new recipient supposed to be able to receive the email as well. Okay, but in this configurable file, always remember that login credential should not be part of this configurable file. Your username and your password shouldn't be part of this configurable file due to security purpose. Then your login credentials are supposed to be stored in the orchestrator as an asset instead of in this configurable file. Okay, so remember this one. Okay, and the next one is about logging. So what is logging? Log are basically a file that include a timestamp. Is a timestamp file contain informational event, error, and warning messages related to the automation. So whatever that is happening in the automation, it will create a log in the log file. If there is any error message, that error message will be included into the log file as well. So by doing proper logging in the workflow, it helps in telling a more complete story of what the software robot has done. Like for example, the login status, whether the login successfully or failed. So this is the information that we can include in the uh, log file. The process status, if they are doing a process by transaction file, is every transaction has been processed successfully or is it failed? So these are the process status that we can also include in the log file. Whether the application open, the close of the application, if you create some file, if there is any error message, or there is any business or system exception. So all these things can be included in the log file for audit purpose as well. So when doing the auditing, you'll be able to see like what the robot basically is doing from from start to end. And if we were to require to use to do troubleshooting, log file is a very important things for the developer to basically have a uh, better picture. This log paint a better picture of how the robot doing the process and where at which part the robot start to fail in the process. So logging is a kind of like is a storyteller. Okay. The next one is about error handling. So in ideal situation, we always want the automation to run successfully every single time without failure. And that is the perfect condition that we would like to have all the time. However, in reality, unfortunately that in robot is that robot, no matter how carefully you build it, you carefully design and develop the workflow, it is very unlikely for robot to work all the time. That's why in RPA, it is extremely important for the robot to able to do the error handling. It will be able to handle all the known uh, errors and exception. Okay, so by with of course then with the documentation that you have the PDD document, the PDD, you'll be I mean if the user able to tell what are the potential exception and error, that is perfect, or else the developer will need to do enough testing that to find out what are the where are the steps that is prone to error, and you apply the error handling to it to improve the overall workflow success rate. Okay, and error handling is also about when the error is not recoverable. It can notify the process owner about this error, and if the process owner would like to process the the thing manually or whatever. So it is also beside doing the error handling, it can also notify the process owner as well. Some common errors and exception that you can apply the error handling, like for example, login failure, some of the directory not found, whether the directory has been accidentally deleted by somebody else, or if it is basically a network drive, a network drive, and due to network failure that the robot not able to access to the directory, or some of the data file is not found. Okay, and that could be also about the business exception whereby or system exception like application crash or application launch delay, or there are some intermittent uh, pop-up window out of nowhere. Like for example, the common one is about to uh, overwrite the file, overwrite the data or overwrite anything. So what you need to do is the error handling. If randomly there is some of the this scenario happen, it will automatically handle all these error by doing the retry or record the error and send it to the process owner. So depends on how you design that. Okay. And the next one is about testing the workflow. While developing automation workflow, it is recommended to perform tests as frequent as possible. How frequent is that? That we recommend to test the workflow every 3 to 5 steps added into the workflow. So the reason of doing this is to test if there is any bug with the addition, the new step that you added into the workflow. And it is also to avoid for the developer to run into the situation whereby when they completed the development, then only they run the test and to find out that uh, there are some bugs or some error happen in between that might require a change of design, or even worse scenario, which is to redesign the entire workflow. And if you are fall into this scenario, is actually wasting a lot of time and effort because the developer did not test while he or she is developing the workflow, and they only do the testing after they done the development. So in this, what my recommendation is that perform tests as frequent as possible. The number is not fixed, but I strongly recommend for you to test your workflow every 3 to 5 steps, which I think is an ideal one. Okay. And the next one is about the test data. Okay. In developing the automation, not all the time we can develop the automation with actual data. If we are dealing with some of the sensitive system or sensitive data, which we are not allowed to have while we are doing the development, that is when we need to have a good and quality test data. And a good quality test data is vital in developing the automation. If the process owner is the one who providing the test data, you can always request the data pattern to be as close as possible to the actual data. And you must also request the extensive variety of test data if the data is, I mean, you have a several variety of data pattern or data types. So when you are requesting that, this is the thing that you can request. Close to possible, as close as possible to actual data and the variety set of data for you to develop and to run and to test the workflow. If you were to create your own set of data, once you complete your test data, it is always good to verify your test data set with the process owner. So you see whether this is the same data pattern with the existing data set or not. Because without doing that, you might create a too generic test data, or it could be also potentially you are creating a wrong uh, test data pattern that in the end will lead to the workflow design in the wrong direction and ultimately causing the entire project to fail because you are working with a wrong test data set. So this is a very important thing that whenever you are working with test data, sample data, remember the 2 points, which is to get a similar set of data and the variety of it. Always remember this part. And I think this is very crucial. And the last one is about using the agile development approach. Okay, whereby by using this agile development approach, it is basically for agile is basically is an approach for us to do the program development in a very effective way. If okay, so what is agile? Agile is basically is iterative and incremental, whereby you can always the prepare the program, analyze it, and break it into multiple steps, many small steps, and you can set a lot of testing in between. Okay, and it is a methodology that uh, promote a lot of communication in between teammates and setting a lot of kind of like a goal setting in in developing the project. And by using Agile, it will also help in figuring out what is the best design of the automation while you are developing the automation. It is a recommended approach when you are developing a complex workflow which involve a team of developers. Okay, and Agile is a separate training by itself. And if you are interested and you would like to know more about it, Cybian is actually offering a series of Agile training, and you can reach out to us to understand more about the Agile training. Okay. Okay. In summary, best practice is the way to go, and it has proven the value in producing a good quality workflow, good quality automation, and with by implement best practices, the positive impact actually covering not just the developer team, but it cover multiple parties, including the development team, the maintenance team, and also to and it also involve, I mean, like impact the process owner, or we call it the user. And the benefit including the promote development efficiency, and to increase the, I mean, that to improve the maintenance effort, and improve the workflow flexibility, and also uh, it promote a good auditing as well, with logging and everything. And always remember, these best practices is not a fixed set of guidelines, and instead it should be a dynamic. These guidelines should be dynamic and reviewed on a regular basis, as and when there is new idea or new technology emerge, and or some new idea that is basically promote the uh, usability, and also the it give good impact to the governance team as well. Okay, so this is all about the best practices that I can recommend to you. And any questions so far? Yep, I hope that you all can see the latest, I mean, the latest slide. And I do have the questions that somebody is asking. You mentioned about testing. Are there any specific test solution that you use? Um, I do not have any test solution, any specific test solution, because the testing is basically another topic by itself. But whenever you are developing your automation, you should be also include like what others you should create some scenario that you like. I mean, like the scenario that is potentially happening in the situation, in the automation. Therefore, you should simulate that a situation, or if you are using if you are taking in data, you should also include the different scenario to process different type of data. So I hope that answered about the test solution. Another question is about, is agile development the best way um, for RPA development? Um, it is my recommended way, if especially when you are dealing with if you are building a complicated workflow, especially that you are not doing that you are not developing alone, but you're developing with a number of developers together. So while working on the same project, I would say that agile development is one of the best way in RPA development, in doing that, because agile is very flexible. It can be applied in multiple places, and of course it is recommended to use it in the RPA development as well. So, and next question, do you find UiPath automation of a useful tool for governance? Useful tools for governance, if so. Still, you got any recommended on how to set it up properly? Um, the governance, I would say, is a is basically another topic. But if for the automation ops, if you like to know more, I would recommend that you can contact me separately and we can discuss about uh the automation ops separately. Okay, thank you. And do you have any governance or policy on the bots that develop? Um, I don't quite understand about the governance or policy on the bots developed by citizen developer. Okay, um, for the citizen developer, because they might, I would say best practices. You can have a set of best practices, and it is also useful for the citizen developer as well. Because I would say that if you are talking about the policy, best practices, you can actually use it as a policy and to use it for not just the citizen developer and the RPA developer as well. I would say that because I would say these best practices is not a fixed set of guideline, but it should serve as a kind of like it's a SOP whenever they are building their own automation. So that's why I would say you can always have a set of best practices and provide it to them, like a SOP as and when they are building their bots. Okay, and I have a next question which is on what use cases RPA is worth to implement and have a short time frame of ROI. For this question, it is basically if you can identify the process that is uh, repetitive, is a manual, and is a manual and use a lot of manpower in processing that. I mean, to work on that process. So you can always use design a bot to work on that, and you can basically enjoy the. I mean, you can have the short time frame of ROI already. And the next one, how do we determine the right process to automate? I mean, like the previous one, as long as it is a manual, it is a repetitive, highly repetitive, and it is a in that you can already use it as, I mean, to determine that is already hitting the right process. I mean, it's already considered as a right process to automate already. And I have another question, which where can cost vary among RPA software? Um, in this, what do you mean? Where can cost vary among RPA software? In this part, I mean, every software vendor, the cost can be different, and this is I don't quite get about. I mean, like, what are the costs you are mentioning about? And if you would like to know more about, I mean, like, I actually inviting you to contact me separately, and we can discuss on what do you mention about the cost vary among the RPA software. Okay, and then I have one last question. Can you share few sector on RPA usability cases? Okay, so what are the sector? In basically in every uh in my opinion, every sector, every industry, I mean there are potential for RPA. Like for example, the very simple one. For every business, it required accounting, account department, required report generation, it required data entry, it required uh, report generation, and other things. Okay, so these are all the potential sector that we can actually implement RPA. Like the example that one of the example that I shared earlier, that like for example report generation. Every A lot of industry require report generation, whether it's a government or what I'm talking about, it could be include government as well. And as long as you see that the business process is a manual, is a repetitive, highly repetitive, then you can basically look into that part and see does it have a fixed set of rules to get the task done or not. If it comply to all these rules where you have a fixed set of rules or fixed set of pattern to in getting the task done, then yes, I would say that is very much possible in using RPA to take over that task from the human from the person and to automate that process. And if I would like to share more, that I in medical, in logistic, in any business that can is potential to use RPA as well. That's why. And for this one, if you like to know more, you are more than welcome to contact me. You can private message me or you can email me, and we can further talk about uh what is basically potential within your organization. If you like to drill into or you like to check whether it's like it is possible to implement RPA within your organization or not, yes, and you're more than welcome to speak to me and we can talk more about that. So if there is no more question, then I would like to thank you, all of you, in joining this session, and I hope you are getting something out of this session. So if you have any more question, you are more than welcome to contact me, and we can we can further discuss about your question. And thank you once again, and goodbye. Have a great day ahead.